homes. Was her husband a serial killer? Hey guys, welcome back to Chaotic Commentary. Today we're going to be looking at some true scary stories. Let's get into it. A 1960s suicide house and elegant dinner party. I had previously posted this on another subreddit but thought I'd share this here. This isn't a typical scary story, but just a really odd situation that happened to me back in 1997. In the late 90s and early 2000s, I worked doing trauma scene work. I was a supervisor of a crew that you never see or hear about, but what we did was go into homes, buildings, or other structures after a homicide, suicide, accidental death, and situations like that. So like a cleanup crew? Like the movie The Cleaner? I could never do that. Ugh. Sometimes they were very gruesome, and sometimes it was as simple as removing a chair and cutting out the carpet. Oftentimes, it involved a lot of cleaning and removal to sanitize the scene both visually and biologically. I used to wonder about how that worked, and then I saw the movie The Cleaner, and I was like, oh. I guess somebody has to do it. I hope they pay well, because eesh, I couldn't be me. Our goal was to leave the scene as void as possible. Like if you didn't know what had happened there, you would just assume that it was under renovation. This one time, it was about midday, so not the usual middle of the night come clean up after a dead body call. I don't know why the police and fire departments always waited till night to call us out, but I would say 80% of the time that is how it happened. The day was a bright, sunny, not so warm day in a suburb of Los Angeles. I won't give the exact details of the location for privacy, or that I even remember exactly what street it was on, but I do know it was an older yet very wealthy area of Los Angeles. The kind of neighborhood where you expect doctors, business executives, and people in the entertainment industry to live in. As we pulled up into the home, it was a huge spread of mid-century modern with a fancy landscaping and a long curved driveway. The place looked very well kept and probably a showcase of the neighborhood back in the 1950s or 1960s. The typical scenario was I, being the supervisor, would approach the door while my crew waited by the trucks. Since this was supposed to be a small job, we only had my vehicle and our service truck. I remember seeing an old fancy Mercedes and what looked like an old Porsche in the driveway. No other cars, but maybe there were some in the garage that I didn't see. As I walked up to the door, an older woman answered my knock. She was probably in her mid-50s, very well made up with lots of jewelry on, and she was wearing something that reminded me of Mrs. Roper from Three's Company. Not cheap looking, just not in the 1990s style. I explained we were here for the cleanup work. I then noticed she had a drink in her hand, like a martini or something. Like I said, this was the middle of the day and probably before lunch. Not usual to find people drinking at a time like this. She leads me into the house. It's surprisingly dark and hazy with cigarette smoke inside. Now what happens next was really odd. The entire place looked like it was a time capsule from the now what we call the Madman era. The house wasn't what gave me the creeps, but actually is leading me to like a second den era. We passed through the front room, another living room, and a bar/pool table area. Like I said, this house was huge, but there are a ton of people in the house, and well, to describe them, they all looked like characters from some early 1960s movie. A guy with a sport coat, glasses, and boat captain's hat. A guy in a tuxedo. A lady wearing a fur collar long evening dress. Other people there that looked like some weird collage of mixed people from some dinner party set back in some Rosemary's Baby movie set. What is going on? What is happening? Are they having a party at a crime scene? Why are they having a party at a crime scene? The amount of people throughout the house didn't add up. There were only 2 small cars in the driveway, and one could only fit 2 people. Where did all these fancy people come from? There was a low mumble of different conversations from all around, with only an occasional glance at me as we are walking over to the scene. I remember one of those huge old cabinets with a record player playing Johnny Mathis. I know that because It's Not For Me to Say playing on the record was like I was about to walk into the Twilight Zone. We finally get to the room where the suicide happened. There was a red velvet chair that the deceased was in, and it wasn't a gunshot, but I assumed it was a razor to the wrist. The lady is standing at the entry of the room. I am looking over at the scene and tell her we will remove the carpet and remove and dispose of the chair as it held the most blood. She just nodded and still had her drink in her hand. I asked her if she could sign our work order and the release for disposal of personal property, meaning the chair. As she signed, she said, "When you and your crew are finished, just see yourselves out." I told her it probably wouldn't take us more than an hour. She turned to walk away and back to her party. I made the journey back to the front door, through the Johnny Mathis record playing, through the cigarette smoke, and through the low-tone party conversations. I go out to my truck and guides and tell them this one is creepy. There's a freaking party going on inside and everyone is dressed up. I lead my crew back to the room and they start backing up the chair and cutting out the old blue carpet. The blood stains were where the blood dripped down through it, and we ended up just cutting out half of the room of carpet, and even straight cut across the room as to avoid having to move a lot of big old furniture. We never found out who committed suicide, but I had assumed it was the lady's husband. As we were finishing up, I stayed behind in the room to take final photos, as it was our protocol to take before and after photos. I thought about looking for the lady of the house just to let her know we were finished, even though I got the impression we were to do what we needed and then leave and not bother her again. I still just wanted to give her confirmation, so as I slowly walked again through the party areas, I noticed no one was making eye contact with me or even acknowledging my presence. You would think that if everyone at the party had known about the death, it would have been conversation or at least interest. I walk over to the front door and turn to look back at the party stuck in a time capsule and close the master front door behind me. Driving away, I couldn't help but think, what a strange day. So bright and sunny outside, I wonder how many people knew we just cleaned up the remnants of someone's last moments on earth. That is weird. What was going on there? Was like, did he commit suicide at the party and they continued to party? Or was she celebrating her husband's death? Like, what was going on here? I want to know what was going on too, because that is weird. Next story. A true story, very creepy. So, a year and a half ago, me and my family went for a stroll at the bay, and we went on the trail to the water. We figured it was too cramped, so we went back, and suddenly we saw pants, a shirt, and shoes laid on a bush. We didn't see those clothes when we came to the trail, so then we got terrified and ran back to our car. Okay, so either somebody was doing the do, or somebody then got done, if you know what I mean. That is creepy. I always find it very creepy, like, when I see random clothes laying around. I always wonder, like, are these clothes someone threw away? Did something bad happen? I'm always creeped out when I see random clothes laying around, especially underclothes, because I have seen that before. Like, I've seen, like, random underwear and stuff, like, walking to work some days. I just be, like, wondering. I don't know. All right, that was a short one. Next story. College house haunted AF. I have a ghost story. I was at a friend's place near College Park they rented for the school year. They have a studio with a guitar and drums and synths. I don't know how that's how you say that. My buddy, Tom, goes to leave to pick up his girlfriend an hour away. I'm by myself playing guitar and hear my friend talking on the phone for like 15 minutes. I go to the door and ask him why he hasn't left yet. When I open it, I see no one is there and his car is gone. I close the door and turn around to see white smoke in front of me that disappears quickly. Another day, I was jamming with his roomie and I hear Tom say, "Stop." This was very weird because, again, he was not home. So I keep playing, thinking I must be hearing things. Then I hear it louder. "Stop." Now me and his roommate both stopped playing. I asked him what he heard and he said it sounded like Tom saying "stop" in a nasally voice. After all that, I continue to hear crazy stories from Tom of kids in 1800 style clothes appearing in the haze, random smoke floating around, drawers flying open, and karate chops from a child on the back. What? That last one? So the ghost child is just karate chopping people? Why? This is weird. I've mentioned before, I don't know if I believe in ghosts and spirits. Well, I do somewhat believe in like a spiritual realm. Ghosts haunting people, I'm not sure. However, as I said before, I'm not taking no chances. I have never understood in like horror movies where it's like the paranormal and their house is being haunted and they continue to live there. Because I'm out. No, not at all. I'm not about to live here. I would rather go live in my car than live with a ghost who's trying to murder me. So why do y'all just stay in these houses? Next story. Creepy story from Ohio that haunts me. So I looked around for a community for stories related to Ohio and I couldn't find one. So I'm going to post this here. Hopefully it'll reach some Ohio people. This story is from about 20 or 30 years ago and happened in the wonderful place of Columbus, Ohio. So around the year of 1995, plus or minus a couple years, my grandmother was married to a very mean man. They resided in Columbus, although that's not where she was from. My grandmother was caring for and raising my cousin and her grandson at the time. I was about 8 years old then. He was a few years younger than me. Her husband was very abusive to her and just a really sick-minded individual. Eventually, my grandmother was no longer caring for my cousin and he went to live with other family. Thus forward, I refer to her husband as Herb. After he left her care, he told some stories of the things that happened while in her care. This was what he told me that disturbs me to this day. I can't help but wonder what was happening and how many victims there were. Victims? Was her husband a serial killer? My cousin said during the day, Herb would often take him to a place they referred to as the boys club. Herb's brother would be there. I'm unsure if it was his brother's house or maybe a place they rented. Well, Herb would take my cuz in there where there was other young boys. Herb would leave my cuz, whom he was raising as his son at the time, upstairs watching TV with other boys, while Herb and his brother took boys down into the basement. My cuz said they would take them down one at a time, would have them there for a while, send them up, and take another down. I wasn't expecting any of this when I started reading the story. Oh my god. Now, mind you, I can only speculate what was happening in that basement. To my knowledge, this is pretty much the gist of what my cousin said happened. He was really young, and I was very young when the story was told to me as well. I catch myself wondering about those boys who were probably around my age now. What was happening in that basement, and did anyone ever tell anyone? Herb was a scary man. He scared me as a child. Herb has been dead for years now, not sure about his brother. My grandma and maid had never got away from him had he not died. Wow. I feel like I know what was going on in that basement, but jeez, man. What is wrong with people? I was not expecting that. Going into that story, that's not what I was expecting to happen. I guess it fits the theme of a true scary story. Alright guys, so that's gonna do it for that video. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me down in the comments what your thoughts are. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye!